Herbst, meine Güte. Und ich möchte mich auch von meiner Seite bedanken für alle, die so hart geschuftet haben. Es gibt solche Wochenenden und die gibt es nicht so oft im Jahr. Wir wussten, dieses Wochenende kommt auf uns zu. Auch letztes Jahr um diese Zeit Sisterhood und dann gleich am nächsten Morgen Walk for Freedom. Aber ich habe unser Team heute Morgen bedankt. Ich möchte jetzt hier vor allem unser Dream Team bedanken. Vielen Dank, dass ihr immer so stark hier unterstützt. Wir haben bei jeder Veranstaltung natürlich Bedarf auf Menschen, die hier mitdienen, die begrüßen, eben als Ordner, die auf die Sicherheit aufpassen, im Kaffeebereich, das Essen vorbereitet wird für Sisterhood. Ich habe gehört, also tonnenweise, literweise, der Kirby's Cremesuppe eben ist natürlich kostenlos angeboten worden am Freitagabend und auch Apfelweihe, Apfelkuchen und so weiter und so fort. So vielen, vielen herzlichen Dank. Ich möchte uns auch daran erinnern, dass am kommenden Samstag ist eine Möglichkeit, wenn du gerne mit den Händen arbeitest oder gerne putzt. Wir haben jetzt am kommenden Samstag, die Samstag da drauf, am 21. und auch wieder am 28. 2 Arbeitstage, nur vormittags, also vormittags 9 bis 1 Uhr, 9 bis 13 Uhr, wir arbeiten hart. Und 9 bis 13 Uhr. Und wir möchten gerne einfach alles hier auf Vordermann bringen, einmal im Jahr, dass wir ein bisschen Zeit investieren für unser Haus hier, physisches Haus, für Gottes Haus, dass wir hier uns gut repräsentieren. Und so nimm das bitte in Anspruch. Man kann auf den Kontaktkarten in jeder Schulreihe, man kann es einfach notieren. Ich möchte gerne dabei sein. Bei jedem Ausgang gibt es eine Möglichkeit, das dort reinzuwerfen. Und somit hast du dich angemeldet. Und einige haben sich schon angemeldet. So vielen Dank dafür. Ich begrüße auch unsere Online-Gäste. Wir freuen uns, dass ihr eben zuschaut heute in diesem Augenblick. Wir haben euch nicht vergessen. Wir freuen uns, dass wir diese Möglichkeit anbieten können. Vor 4 Wochen haben wir diese Themenreihe angefangen. Das heißt, wer wir sind. Und wir haben gesagt, es ist eigentlich wie der Zug auf dem Bahngleis. Also es gibt natürlich links und rechts die zwei Schienen, auf denen man fahren kann. Und gerade bei dieser Themenreihe, wir fahren auf den 2 Gleisen und zwar in dieselbe Richtung. Wer sind wir als Individuum? Gott möchte gern, dass wir erkennen, wer wir sind in Jesus Christus. Wir haben gewaltige Lieder heute Morgen gesungen. Wer sind wir in Jesus Christus? Haben wir von dieser Wunder erfahren, dass er uns neu macht, dass er uns erkennen lässt, wie gut er ist. Und dass er unser Herzen völlig verändert. Und so, wer sind wir? Wer sind wir? Wer bist du in deiner Charakter, deiner Integrität in Bezug auf Themen in dieser Welt? Also wer bist du? Hast du es klar definiert? Und dann haben wir auch uns die Frage gestellt, gleichzeitig diesen anderen Gleis, wer sind wir als Gemeinde der offenen Tür? Als eine Ortsgemeinde unter vielen. Wer sind wir und was sind die Dinge, die für uns wichtig sind? Wir haben Kulturpunkte, vielleicht ohne dass ihr es gemerkt habt, haben wir verschiedene Kulturpunkte unter die Lupe genommen für uns als Gemeinde. Wir haben angefangen mit dem Thema, wir sind auf einer Mission. Wir haben eine Mission und wir sind alle Missionaren. Diejenigen, die sich zu Jesus Christus bekennen, wir sind alle im selben Boot und wir fahren in eine Richtung, nämlich um unsere Welt zu verändern. Und dann haben wir als zweites Thema, wir sind voller Vision. Wir haben gespürt, wir haben erkannt, wir haben etwas zu unternehmen und Gott schenkt uns, ich denke, und wir hören immer wieder von welchen von euch, Gott hat mir ich verspüre diesen Auftrag, diese Vision, womit ich mein Leben und meine Zeit investieren soll und kann und darf. Wir sind voller Vision. Dann haben wir zusammen, meine Frau und ich, über das Thema, bei uns geht es um Beziehungen. Gott ist ein beziehungsorientierter Gott. Er ist nicht weit, weit weg, sondern er ist uns nah. Er möchte gerne eine Beziehung mit uns führen. Und somit können wir auch in unsere Beziehungen, können wir gesunde Beziehungen führen. Letzte Woche, spannendes Thema, wir sind Kämpfer. Ganz strategisch hinplatziert, eine Woche vor unserem Walk for Freedom, was gestern stattgefunden hat. Wenn wir unsere Welt verändern müssen, wir müssen erkennen, es gibt auch einen Feind. Genauso gut wie es einen Gott gibt, er liebt uns, er hat einen Plan für unser Leben. Genauso gut gibt es einen Feind. Er möchte nicht, dass es uns gut geht. Er möchte unser Leben zerstören. Und so deswegen müssen wir bereit sein, in das Leben für die richtigen Dinge zu kämpfen und auch einfach für unser eigenes Wohl und Sieg und so weiter auch bereit sein zu kämpfen. Oft liegt bei uns Menschen eine große Kluft zwischen der Person, die wir sein sollten, und der Person, die wir momentan wirklich sind. Große Kluft manchmal. Aber welche Art von Menschen wollen wir sein? Und wir haben uns die Frage gestellt, welche Art von Menschen müssen wir sein? Weil es gibt natürlich haufenweise Hoffnungslosigkeit in dieser Welt und wir müssen uns ändern, damit wir das widerspiegeln, was Gott ist in unserer Welt. Nicht vergessen, wir haben Bücher zu dieser Themenreihe immer wieder empfohlen. Die gibt's. Ich habe heute nochmals geschaut. Es gibt eigentlich 2 Bücher speziell zu dieser Themenreihe, Leben mit Vision und Intentional Living gibt es nur auf Englisch, also das 2. Buch von John Maxwell. Aber hervorragende Bücher. Ich stelle gerade passend zu diesem Thema heute, bei dem heutigen Predigt, ein bisschen später, ein gewaltiges Buch, was wir extra bestellt haben diese letzte Woche, damit ihr es heute habt. Stell dir vor, Gott liebt dich. Und Gott hat einen Plan für dein Leben. Ich weiß, wir sind alle vielleicht irgendwann mal auf diese Gedanken gekommen. Gibt es einen Gott? Aber stell dir vor, es gibt nicht nur einen Gott, aber er hat ein persönliches Interesse an deinem Leben. Und er liebt dich. Und er möchte gern, dass es dir gut geht, in jedem Bereich deines Lebens. Und gerade deshalb, er gibt uns Prinzipien. Er hat uns nämlich die Bibel gegeben. Wir feiern jetzt dieses Jahr, Reformationsjahr, vor 500 Jahren, Martin Luther. Gott sei Dank gab es einen Martin Luther, hier aus Deutschland, der leidenschaftlich aufgestanden ist und er hat gesagt, die Menschen müssen erkennen, diesen Gott ist nicht weit weg. Wir müssen nicht nur durch irgendwelche Priester gehen oder eben diese Kirche, Hierarchie und so weiter. Wir können direkt zu ihm kommen. Und was für ein Vorrecht, diese Wahrheiten erkennen zu können. Aber gerade deshalb, er gibt uns Prinzipien in seinem Wort. Und hier ist eine davon, was wir heute anschauen werden. Und so hier in 2. Korinther Kapitel 9 und Vers 8, Chris hat es vorhin gelesen, denkt daran, ein Bauer, der nur wenig Samen aussät, wird auch nur eine kleine Ernte einbringen. Wer aber viel sät, wird auch viel ernten. Jeder von euch muss selbst entscheiden. Er überlässt es uns, wie viel er geben möchte. Gebt jedoch nicht widerwillig oder unter Zwang, denn Gott liebt den Menschen, der gerne gibt. Interessante Aussage, Vers 8. Er wird euch großzügig, und hier verstehen wir Gottes Herz viel besser, mit allem versorgen, was ihr braucht. Ihr werdet haben, was ihr braucht, und ihr werdet sogar noch etwas übrig behalten, dass ihr es mit anderen teilen könnt. Das entspricht Gottes Herz. Und so, wenn wir sagen heute, wir sind Geber, und Gott möchte gerne, dass wir erkennen, dass wir geben können von unserer Zeit, von unseren Ressourcen. Gott hat uns sein Bestes gegeben durch seinen Sohn Jesus Christus. Und so wir sind Geber. Wir sind auf einer Mission, wir sind voller Vision. Uns geht es um Beziehungen. Wir sind Kämpfer und wir sind auch, als seine Kinder, wir sind Geber, weil er zuerst gegeben hat. Seit Anbeginn der Zeit, der Mensch, das ist interessant, der Mensch kämpft mit etwas, was wir heute definieren werden als Selbstsucht. Der Mensch seit Anbeginn der Zeit kämpft mit der Selbstsucht. Und es ist von Anfang an so deutlich zu erkennen, wo die Bibel anfängt und es beschreibt quasi diesen Garten und der Mensch bekommt alles von Gott. Gott sagt, du kannst alles haben und genieß es auch. Und übrigens, dazu schenke ich dir eine wunderschöne Frau. Und so genieß alles. Aber von diesem einen Baum, überleg mal, der ganze Schwarzwald, voller Bäume, und Gott sagt, nur einen Baum darfst du nicht anfassen. Du darfst nicht von diesem Obst essen, von diesem einen Baum. Aber irgendwie, diese Selbstsucht in unsere Herzen als Menschen, das war der erste Sündenfall. Stolz wo wir sagen müssten, Gott, wir vertrauen dir nicht, dass du mir versorgst mit allem, was ich brauche. No, ich brauche das noch dazu. Und so diese erste Sünde entspringt oder entsprungen aus der Selbstsucht und Mangel an Vertrauen. Und so dafür, wir werden jetzt eine spannende Botschaft heute. Wir machen es ein bisschen anders heute. Vielleicht habt ihr bereits diesen Zettel auf eure Sitzplätze heute gesehen. So was haben wir letztes Jahr gemacht, eigentlich vor 1,5 Jahren. Und ich habe das so stark auf meinem Herzen gespürt, eigentlich schon vor 8 Monaten, wo wir die Jahresplanung für dieses, eigentlich schon länger, für dieses Jahr gemacht haben. Das müssen wir wieder machen. Wir zeigen ein Videopredigt heute. Nicht, weil ich nicht genug Zeit hatte, um meine Predigt zu vorbereiten. Nee, wir haben das ganz gezielt gelegt auf heute. Wir sind Geber und ich kenne keine bessere Predigt, der das so gut auf den Punkt bringt, als diesem Predigt, was wir euch gerne zeigen möchten. Es ist von einem Pastor namens Robert Morris, Pastor von einer großartigen Gemeinde, hat auch ein Buch geschrieben, was übrigens für heute da ist. Es heißt Ein Leben voller Segen. Gewaltiges Buch, was er geschrieben hat. Und so unsere guten Freunde von Hillsong, die Hillsong-Gemeinde in Konstanz, wir sind gut befreundet mit den Pastoren dort und sie haben uns diesen Predigt oder erlaubt, dass wir diesen Predigt also hier zeigen. Das haben sie übersetzt und dann mit Untertiteln fertig oder bereitgestellt für uns und doch diesen Predigt also hat in Sydney, Australien stattgefunden. Und so wir werden es heute angucken. Ich bitte darum, dass ihr mit offenen Herzen jetzt in diesem Augenblick, dass eure Herzen geöffnet werden, einfach das zu empfangen, das zu erkennen, was Gott uns zu sagen hat. Wir haben Kopfhörer für was wir normalerweise für unsere Übersetzungsanlage benutzen und eben auf Englisch. Und so heute machen wir es ein bisschen anders, weil der Predigt eigentlich akustisch auf Englisch zu hören ist. Wenn es irgendwelche gibt, die nicht gut sehen können, vielleicht ältere Leute, bitte, wir haben eigentlich nur noch 16 Stück, die man in Anspruch nehmen kann. Und so bitte schäme dich nicht, dass einfach die Hand jetzt in diesem Augenblick einfach kurz zu strecken. Wir haben 16 Stück. Und du sagst, hey, ich brauche einen Kopfhörer. Ich würde gerne das Deutsche gleich ins Ohr bekommen. Okay? Und ansonsten, und es gibt deutsche Untertitel. Wie gesagt, es gibt deutsche Untertitel. Und so, es ist kein Kino, es ist Gemeinde. So wie es eigentlich gestaltet werden kann, weil wir natürlich die Technik dafür haben. Bitte schaut, dass ihr gut sehen könnt. Also wir haben mehrere Bildschirme und Möglichkeiten, das anzuschauen. Halte deine Hand so lange hoch, bis einer das gesehen hat und du bekommst einen Kopfhörer. Ich bete kurz. Gott, ich danke dir für offene Herzen jetzt. Ich danke dir für solche Männer Gottes und solche Gemeinden, wovon wir lernen können, Gott. Ich danke dir, dass deine Prinzipien funktionieren. Hab du deinen Weg jetzt bei diesem Gottesdienst in unserem Herzen. In Jesu Namen. Amen.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. I want to say greetings to all the campuses and the services and Pastor Brian there at the Weston. I was with Pastor Brian and Bobby and the Kingdom Builders Friday night and Saturday morning. And I'm so honored to be at Hillsong. You guys have so poured into us over the years, like you've done to so many churches around the world. And I'm going to say something that you probably know, but to hear someone else say it, I'd like to just confirm it to you. It's difficult to share the impact that Pastor Brian Houston and Hillsong Church have had on the world. But you guys are one of the leading apostolic churches. You're like the church in Antioch in the New Testament, in that the church at large has been so affected by you. And Pastor Brian, and I don't mean this as an exaggeration at all, but he really is like an Apostle Paul in our generation. And you are, I know you know this, but you are very, very blessed to have Pastor Brian Houston as your pastor. Such a tremendous, tremendous man of God, and Pastor Bobby as well. So we love you guys very, very much. My wife is here. She'll be actually at the next service But we've been married. When we get home in May, we'll celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary. So, and I brought a picture of our family. Let me see if we can bring that picture up. Here's a picture of my family there. We have the son right beside me to my right in the picture, which will be up to the left is my middle son. The son on our far right is my oldest son and his wife. And then my daughter's on the left with her husband. If you notice, her husband looks different than the rest of our family. He's taller. So, but that's our children with our 3 grandchildren. The one in the middle there, doesn't look like he knows what's going on. He still doesn't know what's going on, but he's having a good time. And then my daughter on the very end again, and her husband, they're expecting their first. So we have 3 grandchildren and 1 on the way. And that's our family. All of our children are grown and married. I told the Kingdom Builders Retreat this the other night, but let me just explain for you so you have something to look forward to. When someone says, my children are grown and married, when they add those 2 words, let me explain to you what that means. Because our children are now grown and married, that means that Debbie and I are now wealthy. Because we've gotten rid of them, and we love our children, but we are glad they're gone. So, no, I'm just joking. I'm joking. And we love grandchildren. Just so you know, if you don't know this, grandchildren are God's reward for not killing your children. So next time you start to just think, okay, grandkids are coming. But what's great about grandkids is you can have them over at your house, hop them up all on sugar, and send them home to get back at your kids. So, all right, turn to Exodus chapter 13, please. Exodus chapter 13. And I want to show you a principle that runs all through the Bible. I can actually show it to you in Genesis and all the way to Revelation, but we're going to just highlight it beginning in Exodus 13. But this is a principle that has brought probably more freedom to my life since becoming a Christian and being filled with the Spirit than any truth that I've ever seen in Scripture. And it's called the principle of first. The principle of first. And it's about putting God first in every area of your life, but specifically in one area. And according to Jesus, when God is first in this area, He'll be first in every area. According to Jesus. So I want to show you this principle, Exodus chapter 13. Let's begin in verse 1. Exodus 13, verse 1 says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Consecrate. That means to set aside. Consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and beast, it is mine. Now, I wish I could really exegete this little Hebrew phrase for you. It is mine. It's only in the Old Testament a few times. It refers to 3 areas, which we're going to talk about, all 3 of those areas today. But it literally means it belongs to me. It is mine. It just means that exactly. It is mine. It belongs to me. That's very, very important to understand that as he talks about the firstborn, he says it belongs to me. It's mine. And then look down at verses 12 and 13. You shall set apart to the Lord all that open the womb, that is, every firstborn that comes from an animal which you have, the males shall be the Lord's. Now, it's not the exact same Hebrew phrase, but it has the same root to this. In other words, belongs to the Lord. But every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, and if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck. In other words, you're going to lose it anyway. And all the firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. Okay, now I have 3 points today. If you're taking notes, I want you to write these down. If you're not taking notes, write these down. These are the 3 points. Number 1, the firstborn must be sacrificed or redeemed. The firstborn must be sacrificed or redeemed. Now that's what we just read. But how do you know which to do? How do you know whether you sacrifice it or how do you know if you redeem it? Well, he gives two animals that represent two classifications of animals. He talks about a lamb and a donkey. A lamb represents clean animals. A donkey represents unclean animals. And so here's what he says. If your clean animal has a firstborn, it must be sacrificed. If your unclean animal has a firstborn, it must be redeemed with the sacrifice of a clean. Now, what in the world does that have to do with us? Well, let me first of all say something to you. Everything in this book points to Jesus. Somehow, everything points to Jesus. And so let me show you the fulfillment of what we just read, all right? Remember, if the animal is clean, it must be sacrificed. If it's unclean, it must be redeemed with the sacrifice of a clean. Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions and show you how this relates to us. And I think it's just going to just blow your mind in a moment when you see this, all right? Here are a couple of questions. Number one, were you and I born, and I'm talking about our spiritual condition, were you and I born clean or unclean spiritually? Unclean. We were born in sin. We all have a bent toward sin, is what the Bible says. Now, I can just prove it to you, as a matter of fact. Let me ask the experts here, the parents. Did you have to teach your children to be bad? Or did it come naturally for them? Comes naturally for them to be bad, right? What do we have to do? We have to teach them to be good, right? That's because we're all born with a sin nature, so we were all born unclean. Okay, here's the second question. Was Jesus born unclean or clean? Clean. Okay, listen, here's what we just read. The clean had to be sacrificed so the unclean could be redeemed. That's what we just read. That's what that represents. And what's amazing to me is the giving the first to God, and we're going to get to this, represents actually our tithe. And this is why it just so hurts me when people talk negatively about the tithe, because I know they don't understand. I want to share something with you about the tithe maybe you've never thought of. Jesus is God's tithe. Because see, we give the tithe first. Here's what he said. When your animal has a firstborn, you give me the first one, and the first one redeems the rest. He didn't say, wait until your sheep has 10 lambs, and then give me the one that you don't like that keeps getting in your garden. Yeah. He said, give me the first one before you have the other 9. Abraham, God asked Abraham for Isaac before he had any more. It took faith. It takes faith to give the first one. That's what tithing is all about. You don't pay all your bills and then tithe. That doesn't take any faith. It takes faith to give the first 10%. And so many people don't realize this because the Bible actually calls Jesus God's firstborn. And it calls him the first fruits, which we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So here's what I want you to know. God gave Jesus first. That's just like tithing. God didn't wait to see if we would straighten up and believe. God gave Jesus while we were still spitting on him and mocking him and nailing him to a cross. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So it hurts my heart when people talk negatively about the tithe, because what they don't understand is they're talking about Jesus. Jesus is God's tithe. He gave, Romans says it this way, he gave Jesus in hope. And that word hope is actually the same word we translate faith. He gave Jesus in faith. God was hoping that we would accept him. But he didn't wait to see. And that's what tithing is. We don't wait to see if we're blessed. We give the tithe first. It's the first 10%. So the firstborn must be sacrificed or redeemed. I have to tell you, when my daughter was dating the man that you saw as her husband, and great young man, fantastic. He was on our staff and our young adults. He graduated from ORU. He's just a great young man. But when she was dating him, they were standing around in a group of about 7 or 8 young adults at our young adult service talking, and one of them jokingly said, you know, your dad is so strong on tithing. They said this to my daughter. They said, I'll bet he even checks the tithing records of the guys that want to date you. And my daughter said, he does. And I did. Well, let me ask you just a very simple question. You have to understand that I believe the Bible. I believe Malachi says that when you take the tithe, you're robbing God. Okay, I can't write that off. That's in the Bible. Okay, so let me ask you a very simple question then. From my perspective, since I believe that verse, why would I give my daughter to a thief? Jesus said, if you can't handle money, you can't handle true riches. And buddy, my daughter's true riches. And if you can't handle money, let me just tell you this, you definitely can't handle her because she is a handful. Listen, the Bible says that when we tithe, God opens the windows of heaven and pours out such blessing on us, there's not room enough to receive it. You realize that tithing is the only, I challenge you, I've read through the Bible hundreds of times, I challenge you to find this if it's not true. It's the only area in your Christian walk where you can test God. It's the only place where God actually says, test me. Test me and see if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour out such blessing there will not be room enough to receive it. And it's like, if you call right now, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sake. Do you know the number one reason people tell me that they don't tithe? Number one, here's what they say. Pastor, I know I should, I know that, but I can't afford to tithe. Can I tell you something as a guy that's been pastoring now over 30-something years? Can I tell you, you will never be able to afford to tithe until you tithe. Because tithing is what breaks the curse and rebukes the devourer. I have told our whole church on several occasions, I've said, you tithe for 1 year, and if you are not fully satisfied at the end of that year, I'll give you your money back. I've told our whole church that. Now, why could I do that? Because it's the Bible. God can't lie. God can't lie. He said, if you do this, this is what I'll do. Okay, so I'll tell you, you tithe for 1 year. If you're not fully satisfied at the end of that year, Pastor Brian will give you your money back. I'm sorry, Pastor Brian. Thank you so much for having me. This is the last time that I will be speaking at Hillsong Church. Okay, all right. The firstborn must be sacrificed or redeemed. Here's number two. The first fruits must be offered. The first fruits must be offered. Proverbs 3, verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty. There's the scripture, there's the verse again, the promise again. And your vats will overflow with new wine. Exodus 23, verse 19. The first of your first fruits. He just wants you make you understand it's first. The first of the first fruits of your land. Now watch this, this is very important. You shall bring, notice the word bring, into the house of the Lord your God. Well, there's a couple things I want you to know. First of all, the tithe doesn't go to Christian ministries or to television ministries or things like that, although I believe in all of those outreaches, but the tithe gets to be brought into the house of the Lord. And that the Bible backs that up, and that's not just this scripture, many scriptures. But I want you to notice also the word bring. God never uses the word give when he talks about tithing. He always uses the word bring because you can't give what doesn't belong to you. You can only bring it into the house of God. Well, think about this principle of the first. Why did God say, bring all of the silver and gold from Jericho into the house of the Lord? Why didn't he say 10%? Why did he say, bring all of the silver and gold from Jericho into the house of the Lord? It's very simple. Jericho was the first city. What he was saying was, if you'll bring me the first, the rest will be blessed. This principle is all through Scripture. When I was in college, one of the students asked one of the professors, why did God accept Abel's offering and he didn't accept Cain's? And the professor said, I really don't know. And later, as I began to read through the Bible and continue to see this principle, it just jumped out at me. It's simple. And matter of fact, you'll see it too. When you understand the firstborn belongs to God and first fruits belong to God, watch how easy this is to see why God accepted Abel's offering and he didn't accept Cain's. Genesis chapter 4, verses 3 through 5. And in the process of time, now that wording is very important. In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Notice it does not say first fruit. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected, or this word means received, Abel and his offering, but he did not receive Cain and his offering. You see how easy it is to understand? Cain is a farmer, but he doesn't bring first fruits. He just brings an offering in the process of time. Abel is a rancher. He brings the firstborn. God accepts that. It's clear. Let me say it another way. It's amazing. Cain brought what he wanted when he wanted. Do you know how many Christians give like Cain? And how many Christians don't know that God doesn't accept it? God doesn't accept your offering when you want and what you want. He has prescribed how we should give. That we bring the first into the house of God. He's prescribed it. It's right there. See, Cain brought what he wanted when he wanted. Here's the way we say it though today. Pastor, I give as I feel led. I don't understand that. That'd be to me like saying, Pastor, I love my wife when I feel led. No, the Bible tells you how to love your wife. And the Bible tells us how to bring our tithe to the Lord, to the house of the Lord. Yes, we give as we feel led. Actually, that's not a bad phrase, but that's over and above the tithe. But the tithe, we return to the Lord. We bring it to the house of God. Did you know that not only did God not accept Cain's offering, but a lot of people don't realize this, God couldn't accept Cain's offering. There are some things God can't do. It's amazing how many believers don't know this, but you have to study the attributes of God. Some people say, well, God is God. God can do anything he wants. No, God can never act outside of his character. He can't because of who he is. So there are some things God can't do. I'll just give you a couple of examples. God can't change. This is called the immutability of God. God can't change. Let me tell you why he can't change very simply. He can't change because if he could change, he could get better, and he can't get better because he's best. So God can't change. Let me tell you something else God can't do, and this might shock you. God can't think the way we think. God can't think the way we think. I'll tell you why. This is the omniscience of God, by the way. If you know the attribute, omniscience comes from two words, all knowledge. God knows everything. God can't think the way we think because we think to figure things out. Okay, he's not trying to figure anything out. God knows everything at the same time. Let me say it again, because you could think about this for a long time. God knows everything at the same time. Let me say it a different way. Nothing has ever occurred to God. God has never said, you know what I just thought of? I just thought of something I've never thought of before. He's never said that. And even a moment ago when I said God can't think the way we think, you might have remembered a scripture and thought, well, the Bible talks about his thoughts. And it proves this doctrine. Here's what the scripture actually says. My thoughts are not your thoughts. I don't think like you think. As the heavens are above the earth, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So there are some things God can't do. Let me tell you one other thing, according to his attributes that God can't do. God can never be second. He can never be second. This is called his preeminence. God is higher than all. He's before all. He's above all. He's first of all. Now, please hear what I'm about to say. That doesn't mean God might not be first in your life, but listen. Just because he might not be first in your life doesn't mean he's not first. See, whether he's first in your life doesn't affect his preeminence. He's still first. But what you need to know is, because he's first, he never accepts second. He can't. So we have to understand this. God will only be first. And when he's first, everything comes in order in our lives. I'm not saying you never have problems. I'm not saying that at all. We live in a fallen world. But I'm saying God can even bring those problems and situations into order as long as he's first. Yeah. But if he's not first, everything's out of order. Okay, so here's point number 3. Point 1, the firstborn must be sacrificed or redeemed. Point 2, the first fruits must be offered. Point 3, the tithe must be first. The tithe must be first. Leviticus 27:30 says, and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. Very similar Hebrew phrase to it belongs to God. It belongs to God. The tithe belongs to him. It is holy. That's a word simply means set apart, set aside to the Lord. Okay, let me give you an illustration, and it's a math illustration, okay? So half of you can tune out right now, okay? But you'll two make it a minute. I understand that. I understand some people are good at math and some people aren't. I understand that. I share this with the Kingdom Builders Retreat. My father's a mathematical genius. I'm not a genius, but numbers actually add up in my mind without me trying to get them to. They just do. They just add up just like that in my mind. And Debbie and I were buying something a while back, and it was $7.99. And we have sales tax. And the sales tax, is a certain percentage in certain cities. I knew what it was in that city. And so she said to me, I'll have to figure the tax on the calculator because the cash register is broken. And I said, it's 66 cents. And she said, excuse me? I said 66 cents. And she added up. She said, it's 66 cents. I wanted to say, yes, I know, but I didn't. I just said, okay. So we got out in the car, and Debbie said to me, I don't know how you do that. I have no clue how you do that. And I said, well, sugar, it's easy. $7.99 times 8.25 is 66. And she said, I don't know how you do that. So I thought I'd try to help her, explain to her, because in math, you round things off, and then you subtract it, and you add it back in, and it's just one of those things that just happens, And I said, well, $7.99 is close to 8. 8 times 8 is 64. Quarter of 8 is 2. 64 plus 2 is 66. I said, that should happen in less than a second in your mind. She said, it doesn't. Then she said, I do know, though, how much 25% off is. I know what that means. I know what 25% off means. And I said, okay, if you're buying something for $100, what does it mean if it's 25% off? She said, it means it's a good deal. Then she said, and 50% off means it's free. Of course, my math mind's going crazy. I said, what do you mean it's free? She said 50% off. It's the same thing as buy one, get one free. And then she said, and 75% off, you're making money. Which explains why she will show up sometimes with a whole bunch of packages and say, I saved you so much money today. Okay. So anyway, all right, let me give you a math illustration about tithing, okay? All right, let's say that you own a landscape company, and I ask you to come put some plants and some trees and some things in for me, and you say to me, okay, Pastor Robert, all of my materials will cost this much, my labor will cost this much, my profit will be $1,000. This will be my total price. My salary for that week will be $1,000. And I say, yes, I agree to that. And then I pay for all the materials and the labor, separately. And then I give you, for this illustration, I give you 10 $100 bills in your hand. Okay, now the word tithe in the Hebrew means 10%. It means 1/10, okay, 10%. So this is the math part, so some of you can tune out. You can catch back up in a minute, all right? So if you have 10 $100 bills in your hand, and the tithe is 10%, how much is the tithe? $100, right? Okay, some of you are still like, okay, carry this, okay. So $100, all right? Okay, now here's the second question I want to ask you. Which one is the tithe? Well, the first one, but, okay, hold on though. How do you know which one is the first one? Listen to me very carefully. It's the first one that leaves your hand. That's the tithe. That's the one that has the blessing on it. In other words, if you go home and say, well, here's some for the house, here's some for the car, here's some for groceries, and here's some for God. Okay, listen to me. That's not God's part. You gave God's part to the house payment. And can I tell you something? The mortgage company does not have the power to bless your finances. here's what people do. Okay, here's some for this, here's some for this, and here's some for this, and here's what's left over for God. Okay, can I just say to you very nicely, he won't receive it. He doesn't receive leftovers. He says this in Malachi, right before he says, you're robbing me. He says, you bring me the blind and the lame. I'm not receiving it. Here's what he's really saying. I'm worthy of your best. I'm worthy of first place in your life. I'm not worthy of last place. So you have to understand what God is saying is you give me the first one, the rest are blessed. The rest are blessed. 90% with God's blessing goes farther than 100% without. But you do it first. You say, God, here's your part. You do it first. Now, here's the way I do it, okay? And I'm not legalistic about this. I'm not trying to make you legalistic about it. I'm not at all. I'm talking about a principle of the heart. I'm talking about in your heart. Here's what I do. I get paid on the 15th and the 30th, and it's automatically deposited into my account. It just magically appears, on the 15th and the 30th. Here's the way I tithe. On the 15th and 30th, while I'm having my quiet time that day, I go online and I send the tithe to the church. I do my bills online. I do banking online. So I just send the tithe immediately. It comes in, the first thing that goes out, it's the tithe, first time, okay? But let's just say that I have an early morning meeting and I rush out and I forget to do it and I get home that night and I think, oh, forgot the tithe today. I got paid today. So I go online to give the tithe, to bring the tithe to the church, and I notice that Debbie has been to the grocery store that day. Okay, I don't say, oh, that's great, sugar, we're cursed. You gave the tithe to Kohl's and, we're cursed now. No. It's not legalism with God. It's about the heart. And I'm asking you, is God first? Do you tithe when you get around to it? Or not at all? It's very, very important for us to put God first and watch what happens when you do it. Now, back in Exodus 13, let me just show you two more scriptures, all right? Exodus 13, verse 14. This is talking about giving the firstborn again, remember? So it shall be when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is this? In other words, why are you killing the firstborn, Dad? That you shall say to him, by strength of hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And it came to pass when Pharaoh was stubborn about letting us go, that the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore, in other words, this is the reason, I sacrifice to the Lord all males that open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. Okay, here's what he said. Now, think about this back then. Little boy runs into the kitchen and he says, Mom, Dad, the sheep is having her lamb. It's her first one. And they say, oh, and so they all get up out of the kitchen and they run out to the barn, but on the way out, the dad grabs the butcher knife. And they get out there and they're all gathered around and all the kids, everybody, and they say, oh, the miracle of life. Look how pretty the little lamb is. Oh, look, he's standing up. He's standing up. And then the dad grabs the lamb by the back legs and cuts his throat. And this little boy's watching this. Now, you know what he's thinking, don't you? Don't mess with Dad. I don't know what that lamb did, but I'm never going to do that. But then the boy grows up, and every time they have a firstborn, the dad kills it. And as he gets a little older, the boy keeps watching this, but he doesn't know why he does it. That's what God says. He said, one day he's going to ask you about this. So now just think about this. Now the young man, he's grown up. He's starting to take a little bit of the business over. And so the father comes in one day from the field, and the son is sitting there, and he's got some books open in front of him, some accounting books, and he says, Dad, sit down a minute, Dad, would you? Dad, I've been going over the books, and I was just noticing something. And now, Dad, you might not even know you do this. We all have blind spots, but I was just noticing that every time one of our animals has a firstborn, you, how shall I say this, kill it. And Dad, you killed 74 animals last year. And Dad, we're in the ranching business, Dad. This is cutting into our profits. And God said, when your son says this to you, you say to your son, son, I need to tell you something about our family that you don't know. But we weren't always in the ranching business. We didn't have any animals, son. We had none. We didn't have land. As a matter of fact, we were slaves. We were in bondage, son. But God, with a mighty hand, delivered us. Therefore, we gladly give to God the first of all of our increase. Now, listen, this was written 4,000 years ago. I had this happen to me. Years and years ago, I'm writing the checks to pay the bills. And I didn't bank online at that time. We didn't have online banking. And so I would write the tithe check first. Always wrote the tithe check first, once I saw this in Scripture. And I set the tithe check over to the side, and then I was paying the bills. Now, okay, for you younger people, just let you know, our generation, we had little pieces of paper called checks, okay? Okay. So I had written the tithe check, and I set it over to the side, and now I'm writing the other checks to pay the bills. And my son comes in. I don't remember how old he was, but he's old enough now to read and write and understand numbers. He had a real good math mind like I have, and so he knew all of a sudden this was a large amount, this tithe check. And he saw it, and he said to me, his eyes just got real big, and he said to me, Dad, why are you giving so much money to the church? And I remembered this passage. And I actually set him in my lap, and I said to him, son, I need to tell you something about Dad that you don't know. Daddy wasn't always a Christian. And Daddy used to be a very, very bad man. But God, with a mighty hand, delivered your daddy. Therefore, I gladly give to God the first of all of my increase. I want you to bow your heads and close your eyes. I don't want to ask you to just take a moment and say, Lord, what are you saying to me through this message? And I know that many, many good believers, people who really love the Lord, struggle in this area. But maybe you've never heard it this way. I know it's been preached here, and this is a great giving church, but maybe you've never really, it's just like it's God's moment for you to say, yes, this is more than just giving 10% of my income to church. This is putting God first. And I want to do this. I want you to make a commitment today. Even if you have to sell something or lower your standard of income, you will never regret it, I promise you. Make a commitment. I am going to return the tithe. I'm going to put God first in this area.
Thank you, Robert. Das ist eine gewaltige Botschaft. Und wenn du hier bist heute und du hast diese Botschaft gehört und du denkst, hier eben, es handelt sich nur um Finanzen oder wie auch immer, dann hast du es völlig falsch verstanden. Und ich denke hier an diesem Punkt, dass so viele Christen, viele Menschen überhaupt, sie denken Kirche und ja, die Kirche will mein Geld, Gott will mein Geld und so weiter. Stimmt nicht, Gott braucht dein Geld nicht. Gott hat alles. Ihm gehört sowieso alles. Gott hat uns Wege gegeben, die uns befreien können von uns selbst, von der Selbstsucht. Und er wusste das. Und mein Herz ist es als Pastor. Und ich höre immer wieder von Geschichten, von einigen von euch, wie ihr am Kämpfen seid in Bezug auf finanzielle Dinge in eurem Leben und immer wieder habt ihr Not in verschiedenen Bereichen und so weiter. Und Gottes Herz ist es, mein Herz ist es auch, euch zu helfen, dass wir alle verstehen, wenn wir großzügige Menschen sind, wenn wir Gottes Prinzipien anwenden, er kann uns in dem Augenblick erst in unseren Finanzen helfen. So wie auch in allen anderen Bereichen des Lebens. Stell dir vor, Gott will das Beste für dich. In jedem Bereich deines Lebens. Und so, wenn es in deinem Kopf, in deinem Herzen, wie auch immer, sich in diesem Moment, also nur um Finanzen dreht, dann bitte lass das zur Seite. Verstehe zuerst Gottes Herz, dass er möchte, dass es dir gut geht. Es gibt diesen Vers in Römerbrief Kapitel 8. Ich weiß nicht, ob wir es hier auf der Leinwand haben. Ich lese es hier kurz vor. Und hier heißt es, Vers 32, Gott hat sogar seinen eigenen Sohn nicht verschont, sondern ihn für uns alle den Tod ausgeliefert. Sollte er uns da noch etwas vorenthalten? Ist das seine Wille? Seine Wille ist es, uns zu segnen. Deswegen das Buch, was Robert Morris geschrieben hat, Ein Leben voller Segen. Wir haben 10 Exemplare. Wir haben natürlich auch einen ersten Gottesdienst. Es kann sein, welche sind schon weg. Aber wir können mehr bestellen. Wie gesagt, also wir verkaufen diese Bücher ohne Gewinn. Wir wollen sie eigentlich nur an euch weitergeben und euch wissen lassen, es gibt tolle Bücher. Bitte nimm das in Anspruch. Es gibt welche da in unser Connect Center heute zu kaufen. Über die Freude am Geben heißt es hier mit Untertitel, die Freude am Geben. Man kann es sogar wirklich mit Freude geben. Wenn du Interesse hast, also wie gehen wir als Gemeinde, als Kirche mit den Finanzen um? Wir haben extra eine Infoabend, machen wir einmal im Jahr. Am 5. November ist der nächste Infoabend für uns als Gemeinde. Wenn du wirklich das Gefühl hast, ich bin Teil dieser Gemeinde, das ist meine Heimatgemeinde, ich ermutige dich, dabei zu sein, um 19 Uhr am Sonntagabend, den 5. November. Und du kannst erfahren, wie gehen wir mit unseren Finanzen um. Wir praktizieren auch das Prinzip als Gemeinde. Wir geben immer 10% von den Spenden, die wir bekommen als Gemeinde, geben wir immer weiter. Verschiedene Missionsorganisationen und so weiter. Wir praktizieren das auch. Als Familie, meine Kinder, wir bringen sie bei, Taschengeld, immer das Erste zur Seite zu legen. Gottes Prinzipien funktionieren. Und ich möchte hier schließen mit einem Gebet. Ich bitte darum, dass wir uns alle neigen und vor dem Herrn gehen. Gott, ich bitte dich,